Alright, this is a lesson on intonation, which is something that I think a lot of people, after they start playing for a little bit, they tend to move on to trying to learn a lot of scales, modes, different chord shapes, move on to songs, things like that. And it's something that a lot of people, they move on to all that stuff and they kind of skip over the fundamental things. And to me, intonation is one thing that I see a lot of people, they really don't spend that much time on it. And if your ear's not really trained very well, or you haven't been playing for a very long time, it's something that will it may escape you why your playing doesn't sound as polished, or like your A chord doesn't sound like so-and-so's A chord, even though you're looking at your hand and you're like, that's an A chord. So we're going to go over a few drills, mostly having to do with bending. We're going to do a little bit of chord stuff and look at some single notes and just kind of show you what I mean as far as intonation versus, if you do things wrong, or if you're overbending or underbending, what that sounds like compared to what it's supposed to sound like when you're doing things properly. Alright, so this is what we're going to do. You're going to start with a target note. So right there we've got our D, and we're going to bend up. So we hit it first, and then bend up to it, and try to match it as best we can. You can play it first, or you can play it after the note, which is a little bit trickier. But this is something that it's easy to do, and it'll get you used to that, what that tension feels like when you hit that note and what it sounds like. So you hit the target note, then you hit what you're going for there. And then you just go a half step up. You can also do half steps. So this is all just ways to kind of reinforce what that note sounds like. So if you're doing a pretty simple lick, like if you're doing something like that, if you're playing that first part, if you're not hitting basically there's two target notes there. There's the D. If you're playing and you're only getting about halfway there before you release it and then go on to the second part, it's just not going to sound right. It'll sound okay, or if you overbend it, it's going to sound okay, but then if you played it back to back with the proper intonation, it's going to sound a whole lot better. And the same with the second part. You're playing that A, you're bending it up. Just going to sound a lot more polished. Alright, so that's the drill. Alright, so now we're going to go over some chord stuff. Because even though, the single notes and the bends, things like that are extremely important. You see a lot of people doing the same thing when they're playing a chord. They might play a shape. Let me get up a little closer here, get a better angle. So you got your A bar chord here. I'm pretty much in tune. But what you'll see is people will pull a note or two just a little bit sharp, like that. You see a lot of this. People get up on stage if they're not used to being on stage or performing in front of somebody or a group or what have you, and they'll play, they'll pull their pinky a little bit sharp, or they'll do this, play like a 9 chord here, and everything will go sharp. It's not a huge difference, and it may not even be perceptible unless you get really far ahead. You get pretty extreme with it. But if you're doing some vibrato or what have you, if you don't return back to that original pitch, it's not a huge difference. But if you got a bass player or another guitar player and they're playing a perfect A7 and you're playing an A7 and you're bending the major third out just a little bit, it's going to clash. It's going to make everything sound just a little bit off. It goes back to that whole polish idea where your A should be your A and not an A with the major third just 2 cents off or what have you. Do like a minor 6, pull that just a little bit sharp, and that's something that you can't see your neck from where you're standing. You just have to be vigilant not to pull your notes sharp, and it's pretty easy to do. Do something like that. You got to really pay attention to that stuff. All right, and then now we're gonna talk about vibrato, which just like everything else, intonation can play a big part in whether your vibrato sounds good, whether it sounds okay, or whether it's just sour. And depending on your level of ear training or kind of if you're playing by yourself versus playing with other people, you may or may not notice any of this stuff. But I promise if it's off and you fix it, you're going to notice it big time. So what we're going to do is we're just going to start with a D here. Just a little bit of vibrato. Let me get my fingers out of the way. And that's a good solid, just generic vibrato, nothing crazy about it. The one thing you can notice is that basically a vibrato is a repeated bend of a note, and depending on how wide you want to make it, it can have quite a bit of a range of sounds. You have to really pay attention and make sure that when you bend, you return to that original pitch. Because if you bend it and then you stay sharp, but just a little bit sharp, then that's an intonation issue. And it doesn't look like much, but if you bend it a little sharp, you can hear that waver compared to right there. So just a little bit off, you can hear it. So when you're bending, make sure you return to the original note. You can always check it with the octave.